The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you. Let the celebration begin.
We're just a week away from opening day, Reuben. That gets me excited every year.
Opening day's in September.
Not football.
Oh, you talking about baseball?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was a football podcast. I'm on the wrong podcast. I'm sorry.
Did you just get really confused? Were you like, what's the date? What happened?
You're thinking, I just missed 6 months. I don't know what happened. What did they do in the draft? What happened at training camp? I was really confused. Yeah, I've always loved, when we were kids, we would go out and start playing baseball like in February. First day it was over like 45, just because the sound of a baseball hitting a glove, the sound of the bat hitting the ground, those sounds they're sounds of springtime, sounds of regeneration and a new beginning. And baseball has that, so much symbolism coming in. The winter's gone, it's in our rearview mirror, the sun's coming out, it's warm days, and it's baseball weather. And as much as I love covering football, and I would hate to cover baseball just because it's a game every night and the travel's brutal. Baseball is my first love when it comes to sports. That's what I grew up playing. It's what I grew up watching. And I still, there's still something special about opening day.
Yeah, it's still exciting whenever you see the first images from spring training and it'll be here soon. So we have that to look forward to. But this is a football podcast, like you mentioned. This is Eagle Eye, and you're Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. So we're not talking baseball today. We're going to talk football, and we're going to start with Joe Flacco. We're going to get into a little bit of his comments, his introductory press conference, also a look at his contract and how the Eagles were able to fit that in. We also we're getting ready for the draft now. Free agency we're still in the middle of free agency, but the draft is really like a month away, a little over a month away. So some interesting developments as these pro days start to come through. So we'll talk about one guy in particular who really helped his cause. And then at the end, we'll have some fun. We'll take a look at the Eagles who are going elsewhere in free agency and try to pick which guys we think will have the most success. And then we'll look at the guys who are still free agents, and we'll each pick one. If the Eagles had to re-sign one, who would it be? But we'll start with Joe Flacco. It was our first chance to talk to him on Thursday. And before we talk about him, let's hear from Joe Flacco himself. You mentioned competition a few times already. So, do you think you're going to have a legitimate shot to compete for the starting job here?
I'm not even really looking at it that way at this point. Like I said, I really just want to come in and, your goal as a football player is always to show people, around you that you can play football. And I don't care what level of playing that is, whether you're the first string, second string, third string guy on the team, you still want to prove to everybody on the football team that you can play football and that you deserve a spot on this team in some capacity. And that's really what my job is. Once I meet the guys and get, dive into this offense, it's going out in the field and proving to everybody that I'm not just some old guy that's been around the league and, is coming to a new team. My job is to prove to these guys that, I deserve some respect and I can play this game at a high level. And that's really what I mean by being competitive and competing, is just showing guys that, I know how to do this, and I'm going to show you that I know how to do this. You don't have to look at what I've done in the past or, in a positive way or negative way. Just take it for what it is, what you see today, and that's what I'm here to do.
Okay, so I thought that was the coolest answer of his press conference. He talked about competition an awful lot.
Yeah, and I like what he had to say. And he was asked a few times in a few different ways about mentoring Jalen Hurts, because I guess he's got a reputation of being the guy that's like, oh, my job isn't to mentor young quarterbacks. But his point was, and I think it's a good one, is the whole atmosphere in the quarterback room is that everyone's working together, everyone's making each other better. And I think that whole notion of, are you going to be a mentor? It kind of oversimplifies the notion of a bunch of guys in an ideal quarterback room, say what the Eagles had with Nick and Carson and Sudfeld. That's happening. Everyone's making each other better. They're all challenging each other in the meeting rooms, in the film room, on the field, on the practice field, and getting the most out of each other. And that's when a quarterback room works, is when there's no jealousy, there's no ego. Everyone's really genuinely pulling for each other. And, I'm sure there's going to be times this year where where Joe Flacco says to Jalen Hurts, what did you see here? So it's not just, I'm going to be the coach and teach you. It's not like that. It's more of an organic guys working together for the common good. And I think when he put it that way, it makes sense. His job isn't to come here and coach Jalen Hurts. They have a lot of people who are going to coach him, but his job is to do everything he can to help the team win. And when they're in the meeting room and Jalen Hurts says, what did you see on this coverage? Joe Flacco is going to show him. And that's being a good teammate. It's not being a coach or a mentor. It's just being a teammate. And like Joe said, that you get that in every quarterback room. Everybody's working together to try to get them all, try to get everybody improving all the time.
Yeah, he clearly isn't into the label of mentor, but I do think he has softened a little bit, at least my outsider perspective on it. It seemed like earlier, in his career, not early in his career, but earlier, when in Baltimore with Lamar and then in Denver with Locke, it seemed like he was a little resistant to it. But last year, by all accounts, he was very good with Sam Darnold. So you'd anticipate that continues. But I think he wants to steer it away from the thought that he's just here as purely a wise old owl backup who's going to hold a clipboard and help the young kid. I think he does feel like he has something to prove, and we kind of heard him just mention that. And that's where the competition comes in. I asked him if I thought he was going to, or if he thought he was going to have a legit shot to be the starter. I don't know if anyone really thinks that. I think it would be pretty shocking if they really, even if they called a competition, I don't think anyone's going to think it's a competition. Like, you have to, even if they don't draft a quarterback, you have to see what you have in Jalen Hurts. So, and I think he knows that, but I think there's a prideful element to any NFL player who's not going to just be happy to come in and say, yeah, I'm the backup. I know I'm the backup. I don't want to play. I want to hold a clipboard and get paid.
Right. And, it's a fine line, but you want your backup to be a competitor. You want him to want to start. You want him to put in all the time and all the work and all the effort to be ready. And, you don't tell anybody look, if you have a Hall of Famer starter, the backup knows he's not going to win the job, but you still want him to have the mentality of, I want to make that throw that he just missed in practice, or I want to, I want to complete more. If you're a competitor, if you've reached this level, and Joe Flacco's won a Super Bowl and 11 playoff games. So, he's a very accomplished guy. He's not going to go out there and just, kind of acquiesce. And I wouldn't, if I was a coach, I wouldn't want him to. So I think there's a lot of different dynamics there. Yes, Jalen Hurts is the starter, barring unexpected on draft day. But yeah, you still want Joe Flacco to be as competitive as possible and not hold back. And I think he will. And I think Jalen Hurts is a confident enough kid that he'll embrace that. I think he wouldn't want Joe Flacco to just kind of sit back and say, you're the guy. What can I do? That's not how the NFL works, because if Jalen Hurts gets hurt, and Joe Flacco has to play, he has to be absolutely as sharp and as ready and as prepared as possible.
Yeah. And there's a lot of space in between anything I can do for you, boss, to Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. Like, there's a lot of space in between there. And I think Flacco will be in that space. But this was our first year. So the last time we honestly did the pod.
One other thing on that. I think Carson was there last year with Hurts, by all accounts. I don't think they were pals. I don't think they were best friends, but it sounds like Carson, wasn't at that Favre Rodgers space. I think he was devastated that he lost the job, but from what I've heard and what I've seen and what I've read and, what these guys have said, he was, he was available for Jalen Hurts, and on game day, you could see him looking at the photos from upstairs and going over them with Jalen. So, I think it was probably really difficult for him, but I think he did that.
Let me go back to the board. 0 days since a Carson mention. We'll try next time. Maybe we'll get there this off season.
No, we won't.
But this is our first chance. On the last podcast, the Flacco deal wasn't official. So we just knew about the visit. So we kind of talked about the idea of him being the quarterback. He got paid a little more than I thought he would. $3.5 million deal with incentives. And I get why there are incentives in here for a backup quarterback, but it can kind of skyrocket. It can be worth up to 7.5 million. I don't know exactly what he'd have to hit. What was your reaction to the number? Because it was a higher number than I was expecting.
Well, to me, the 3.5 is irrelevant. The relevant number to me is 1.56, which is his cap number. I don't know. No Eagle fan should care how much cash they're giving him. The question to me is how much cap space is he taking up? And the way they structured the deal, like they structure every deal, is to move everything forward. So with avoidable year in there, his cap number for this year goes down to 1.56, which is certainly a manageable number. You're not going to find a legit backup quarterback who can contribute in the room and has experience, has won a Super Bowl for minimum wage. You're just not going to find that. You're going to get, who's the guy from Dallas? What was his name? Ben
DiNucci.
Ben DiNucci. You're going to get Ben DiNucci. So, look, I don't know. It doesn't bother me. I mean, backup quarterback is, to me, and I've told you before about the conversation I had with Andy Reid after the Mike McMahon debacle, which I think was 2005. And he said that was when I first realized that backup quarterback is one of the most important spots on the team. And I'm not going to shortchange that position anymore. And, he signed Garcia the next year and he took him to the playoffs. So, we talked about this. I mean, backup quarterbacks, Nick Foles, Rodney Peete in 95, Jeff Garcia in 06. I'm not saying Joe Flacco is going to lead the Eagles to the playoffs, but it's an important position in a lot of ways as far as the quarterback room's health and just that, if the Eagles find themselves 5-5 after 10 games and, in a playoff, in a race for a playoff spot, and Jalen Hurts gets hurt, well, now you got a backup who can go out there and win some games. So I was really surprised at all the pushback on the move. 1.56 is a really manageable number. And the amount that is under next year's cap, I think, is 1.9. So it's, it's more than most backups. It probably puts them in the top. I haven't looked it up, but I would guess it puts them in the top 12 backups. But that doesn't bother me at all. It's not my money. And to me, the 1.56 is the operative number, not the 3.5.
I guess, but I mean, eventually they have to pay that in cap space, or that accounts for cap space eventually. So yeah. I mean, next year they're in a much better position, but it's $2 million next year you could have used when you're probably more competitive, right? I mean,
yeah, but
look,
these aren't huge numbers.
I think they overpaid him. I don't think it's egregious, and it's not surprising either because we know how much stock the organization puts into that position.
And also, if not him, then who? And for how much? Like, who are you going to get for this job? It's an important job. Who are you going to get for it? And what are you going to pay them? And some of the names that we bandied about earlier in the, early in the off season, you're not going to get for 3.5 million.
Yeah, but those names we talked about were better players.
That's true. But you got to balance it all out. And I mean, I still think Flacco, I know he was 0-4 with the Jets, but he didn't play bad. He played pretty well actually when he was in there. So I'm really okay with it.
Yeah, I get it. And we'll see what happens here. He's going to be the backup, and I think he can be a valuable backup. It was really funny hearing him on the call today because I don't know if it was just because he felt like he could really let it loose, but that accent he was going all in on the accent. I don't know if he's ever held it back, but he doesn't stick out like a sore thumb here. It fits him here. It was pretty funny to hear it. I was wondering if he was going to start like throwing in phrases, and he didn't, but it is cool that he's playing here again. He is from here, and it's got to be cool for his family and his friends.
Yeah, I'm sure. And he made the point that, I didn't come here because it's close to Audubon, New Jersey, where I grew up. I mean, I was looking for the best situation, and and he believes it's it. I thought it was interesting that he said he wanted to. He liked the idea of being with a first year coach, a new coach, and a new system, and a coaching staff that was young and hungry and wanted to prove itself, like he wants to prove himself. Yeah, it's. I think it's a good. And I know a lot of people are complaining that he's so different stylistically than Jalen Hurts, and you don't sign a guy who's that different, but. You have the offense and you have different plays for different quarterbacks who play that suit them, but it's not like you have to install a whole new offense if Jalen Hurts gets hurt and you have to play Joe Flacco. It's the same. It's the same playbook. You're just going to call some different plays. So I think people are making too much of that as well. Obviously, they're very different guys, but like I said on Tuesday, you're not going to find somebody with Jalen Hurts' skill set that's available, for a 1.56 cap figure. Who could play the same way as him. So I would think they would get a scout team guy, maybe who plays the same way as him. But other than that, and they've still got some, some quarterbacks to add. So, or at least one, maybe a practice squad type guy. But it'll be interesting to see, if they draft somebody in the late rounds or sign like a scrap heap guy. But, interesting. I mean, the turnover at the position, you're going to go from Wentz, Foles, and Sudfeld to Hurts, Flacco, and someone else in the span of 2 years. You don't get that a lot.
Yeah, you don't. But obviously with the coaching switch, not super surprising. I think they might draft a late round quarterback, and with the goal of developing him to the point where he can be a backup in a year or two. Then you have a cheap backup. I mean, that's the idea. That was kind of the idea with Hurts, at least the one they told us. The problem was everything fell apart after they took him. But that makes sense if you can find a mid-round guy and kind of bring him along slowly, teach him the offense, and then you have your cheap backup. You don't have to pay a veteran a higher price like Joe Flacco. You can kind of rest on your younger kid. I did want to kind of go through the Flacco contract. It's because it's really similar to the Anthony Harris deal. So far, the 3 free agent signings the Eagles have made, and it's not surprising, really minimal cap hits. The Adams one is actually one of those salary benefit deals, so that actually counts under $1 million against the cap. And the way those work is it's basically like he has 5 years of service or 6 years of service, but he only counts as 2 years of service, so you get a little break there. So he's really cheap. Flacco's like 1.5. And Harris is like 1.52. And they basically what they did here is what we've seen them do a ton. They just put these dummy years, these voidable years on the back of the contracts, and they void automatically. You don't have to do anything, and it spreads out the cap hit. So they will have dead money for Flacco and Harris, assuming that they're both gone next year.
Yeah. And I mean, the numbers are adding up down the line. It'll be interesting to see, like, if the cap doesn't go up as much as anticipated, they could be in some trouble because these figures are adding up. But yeah, it's and I think it's what most teams are doing right now with the cap. Maybe Howie's thinking, hey, it won't be my problem if this doesn't work out. I won't be here. So that's the next GM's problem. But it does make sense. I mean, it's such a unique year with revenues being down so much. I'm surprised the cap is where it is. I thought it'd be even lower. I think when this all started, they were thinking 180 as an unadjusted figure. It went up to 185, and I think the Eagles' adjusted figure is what, 203. If I think like that. Something like 203. So that's more than I expected to have 203 million to play with. So the contracts make sense. They're not cap killers, but certainly keep an eye on the future and where they are.
Yeah, and the Eagles do have to open some cap space. They're under the cap obviously right now, but they're going to have a draft class to sign, and they're going to have you would assume they're not done in free agency, so they still have a few ways to do that. The most obvious one is a Zach Ertz trade. That would save still wait on that one. That's about 4.9 million in savings, a little bit less than that.
4.7, I'm thinking, but you could be right.
It's near 5. But then you have to, another guy slides up in the top 51, so it's less than that. They can also still restructure.
The rule 51.
Sure. Yeah, it's pretty simple. In the off season, since you have up to 90 guys on the roster, just the top 51 players count toward the salary cap. So that's it. Easy explanation.
And then before the season starts, I guess with final cuts, it goes to everyone on your roster. So anyway, it's important to explain these things.
Yeah, it is. We live in that world, and not everyone should. No one should, actually.
We dream about salary caps and incentives and roster bonuses.
So Zach Ertz, once they trade him, that's around 5. Lane Johnson is a possible restructure. Fletcher Cox, another possible restructure. And then the Derek Barnett thing too. I mean, they can still work toward an extension with him that would lower his $10 million cap hit. So they have ways to do it. The easiest would be to restructure Lane and Fletcher, and those guys you would think would have no problem saying, yeah, sure. Give me a lump of money right now. I'll take it. So they have ways, but they're going to have to do something at some point.
Yeah. And that's one thing they're really good at.
You're right. So we're like a month away from the draft, Reuben. Everyone has kind of talked about the Eagles getting a playmaker, an offensive playmaker at 6. And it seems likely that's going to happen. But we've kind of been talking between ourselves this week about the possibility of them taking a cornerback. And then Jaycee Horn from South Carolina goes out and has a pretty impressive pro day.
Yeah, he put up some great numbers. He only ran once, and he ran a 4.39. I mean, his vertical, he didn't do the cone drill, he didn't do the shuttle, but everything. I mean, he outdid Surtain in everything, who had worked out, I think, the day before. And Caleb Farley. So there's like the 3 corner. They're like the 3 guys, and there's a lot of conjecture who's the best prospect, who's going to go first. Farley's hurt and hasn't had a chance to work out, and I don't know when he will or if he will. And I know, some people are thinking that the other 2 guys have passed him by now. And Farley, I mean, 2 weeks ago, we thought Farley would have been the first corner taken. So obviously, when you look at mock drafts, these guys are going anywhere from, the end of the top 10. I mean, I saw one mock draft yesterday from a really reputable guy that had Horn out of the first round, early in the second. We're like around where the Eagles picked. That's not going to happen now. I think all 3 of these guys have a chance to go in that 10 to 20 range. And it's interesting because obviously the Eagles know they need a corner. I mean, they've been associated with, a couple of them as far as being interested. And it makes sense to draft one. I think there's going to be quality in the second round, but if they want one of these guys, which is certainly would make sense to get out of number 6 and, look for a team that wants a quarterback, and the Niners and Carolina makes some sense. I mean, if they go 6 to 12, take a corner and get some assets back. I mean, to me, that's a successful, if it's the right guy, if he can play, that's a good first day. So, and then you can still, I mean, you're not going to get the weapon you want, but you're still going to get a pretty good weapon at some point there. So it's an interesting thought. And I still think it's most likely they'll go offense, go skill at 6. But I wouldn't be shocked if I mean, Darius Slay's our only decent corner, and he's 30, and it's a position that they just haven't. I mean, they haven't drafted. I mean, Jalen Mills was more of a functional piece, but as far as drafting a really good corner, they haven't done it in 2 decades. You got to go back to Lito and Sheldon in 2002. That was 19 years ago, Dave.
Yeah. And I don't know the stats on it, but it feels like the bust rate on corners is relatively high compared to some other positions.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see if anyone, tracks that. I'm sure somebody does, but I mean, it's, the Matt Wares and the Curtis Marshes. I mean, these are 3rd-round picks. They're guys that you expect to at least be on your team. And then obviously Sidney and Rasul. I mean, it's been, it's been rough. And it's cost them, because if they could draft corners, they wouldn't have to sign Byron Maxwell or Namdi, or trade for, DRC. I mean, you wouldn't have to go get these guys, or even a Darius Slay, who's a good player, but you wouldn't have to spend that kind of money if Sidney and Rasul were what you thought they were. So it's a huge position the way the league is today. It's a huge position in this division with the receivers in the division, and it's a position they've struggled with for forever. So, I mean, Eric Rowe, he was a 2, right? I mean, that was Chip. I think that was Chip's draft. Was he
15? Yeah.
But still, organizationally, it's been bad. So can't put that one on Howie, but organizationally, they've just struggled so much. So on the one hand, you say, well, don't take a corner because they keep screwing it up, but you can't look at it that way. You still got to get the best player. So if you go to 12 and get one of these guys, I mean, it'd be hard to complain for me.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't think the value would be there at 6 when you're looking at, especially if the quarterbacks start going early. I mean, if you have 4 quarterbacks in the top 5 picks, I mean, you're not going to take one of these corners, I wouldn't think, at number 6. I think the value of, one of those receivers or Pitts or whoever it is, Sewell's going to be too high at 6 to pass them up. But yeah, in a trade down scenario, and I even think, so if they trade down, they have so many picks. They have 11 picks. So if you trade down, whatever it takes, now you have ammo. They're not making 12 picks.
Right.
So I'm looking at it like, man, if you trade down to 12 and you're sitting there at 37 and you have your 3rd round picks, maybe now you pick up a 4th, all of a sudden you have the ammo. You could get back in the 1st round.
Yeah.
I mean, you could end up with 2 1st round picks. And that's the way I would think about it, because to me, it wouldn't be enough to just think we're going to move down to 12 and pick up a 4th round pick, whatever, maybe a late 3rd, whatever it is. That's not enough to me to do that, because I think you'd really be missing out on a good player if you do it. But if you then think I have the ammo now to get back into the 1st round and to get another big player, and remember the 1st round matters too, because then you get that fifth year option with the rookie. So you have control of him for longer. And that can really be a big deal. Look, Barnett right now, it's not like a complete steal because he hasn't been that good. But if Barnett was a stud right now, you'd be looking at this for your 5th year option. Like, whew, thank God they don't have to pay him yet,
Yeah, and millions of bargain.
Yeah, exactly. So that 5th year matters. And that's the way I would look at it. Like if you think you can get one of those guys at 12, you're not worried about losing value at 6, and another team wants a quarterback, that's the only way I'd think about it, is if I can end up with 2 1st round picks.
Yeah, and I mean, they're not that far out of the 1st round with that 2nd pick. I mean, they're 5 spots out of the 1st round. So I would think that would be doable, and I would think that would be something Howie would try to do, get into the mid-20s, somewhere around there, and I think that would be doable.
Yeah, but then you also, if you're Howie and you're the scouting staff looking at these corners in the draft, you got to ask yourself, like, I think you're right. These 3 guys seem to have separated themselves. And there can always be surprises, but they seem to be the top 3. How much better are they, or how much better is the top one than the next tier? Because there's going to be a good corner available at 37, whether it's Stokes or Newsom's probably going to be gone, but there are going to be good players at that position at 37. What's the difference? What's the difference in skill level there compared to other positions, right? Like, how much better are the receivers that you'd get? Those top 3 receivers, much better are they than the receivers you'd get later on? And this is me talking, but I know this is the way Howie views the draft too. And that it's all about value. It's about maximizing, and he hasn't always done it well, but that's the idea behind it. It's always about maximizing the value in any draft class. And if he thinks that there's better value, and sometimes they get screwed by it, and you end up with Donnell Pumphrey in a historically great running back class. But that's the way they think, is that we're going to try to maximize value. So I think that goes a long way too.
Yeah, Howie's he's like a piano player that studies Chopin and completely understands what Chopin was thinking when he wrote, his nocturnes and his preludes, and can understand the music and understand what he was trying to accomplish. But he sits down at the piano, he just can't play it. So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, and they might, they certainly might think that there's value at 6 that is too much to pass up. And it's understandable if that's the case, especially if there's a run on QBs early, which I think we both kind of expect. Man,
That's the problem. Because
got
if you're sitting there at 6 and you have your choice of Jamar Chase or Kyle Pitts, I can't trade down to 12.
Right. Right. You might want to trade down to 7 because you're going to get one of them. But no, you just at that point, as if there's a run on QB, if there's 4 QBs taken in the first 5, they are sitting pretty. And no wonder they want Jalen Hurts to be their quarterback, because you might get a generational guy there. And if you had, I mean, I think you're more of a Chase guy at 6. I'm more of a Pitts guy.
Yeah, no, I'd take, if they're both there, I'd take Jamar Chase.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't go wrong. Who knows? But I think you can't go wrong with either one. But I'm pretty intrigued by Kyle Pitts. I'm really looking forward to seeing his pro day next week and just kind of seeing what he's all about in that situation.
Although I'd imagine he's going to do pretty well.
Yeah, I would think Florida's got like 17 guys working out, so you might be watching NFL Network for like 9 hours. But yeah, looking forward to that one. Hey, Eagles fans, it's time to look forward to a dream vacation. The Philadelphia Eagles fan cruise tickets are selling out quickly. The ship sails on March of 2022 for 7 days and 7 nights with Eagles fans and only Eagles fans. Book your tickets today at PhiladelphiaEaglesCruise.com.
Our old buddy Vinny Curry has a new job. He signed a 1-year deal with the New York Jets. So congrats to Vinny. We all love Vinny. I think he can still play a little bit too.
Yeah. You don't ask too much of him. Give him 20 snaps a game. Did you see any contract numbers for him?
I haven't yet.
Not very much money. Joe Douglas up there. Vinny's played his whole career here, except I guess the 1 year down in Tampa, was it?
Mm-hmm.
He made a fortune down there.
You know what's crazy about Vinny? He had never started a single game in his career until 2017. And then he started every game. He started all 19 that year.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, he played well. Everybody played well that year. Vinny will get you 4 or 5 sacks and give good effort. And we've talked a lot about this. I mean, he's really, developed later in his career into a decent run stopper too. So you can use him situationally, for 20 snaps when you need him. I wouldn't give him more. He's had a nice career. What year did he come out? Like he's been around
12 with Fletch.
I think he was 12 with Fletch. So he's going into the 10th year. Good for him.
Yeah. He'll be 33, I think, by the time this next season starts. He's had a nice career. I mean, probably a little bit of a disappointment where he was drafted, I guess, but he's had the flashes. He had that 9-sack year, and he had such a weird, you're right. Like the career was so weird because early in his career, he was like a 3rd down specialist and they just like brought him in to pass rush. And then like 2 years later, he's out there on 1st and 2nd downs and coming off the field on 3rd down. It's just a strange kind of career from that standpoint.
And he's always been a guy who gets his sacks by effort and determination and persistence. He's not a guy that's going to just spin move and get in there. I mean, he's going to, he's going to wear a tackle down and get him with savvy and grit. He's never been the fastest guy afoot.
Yeah. So he's the 7th Eagle now, former Eagle, to sign elsewhere this offseason. Let me go through the list real quick. Jalen Mills with the Patriots, Rudy Ford with the Jaguars, Cam Johnston with the Texans, Duke Riley with the Dolphins, Malik Jackson with the Browns, Deshaun Jackson with the Rams, and now obviously Vinny with the Jets. So looking at those 7 players, which one do you think finds the most success with their new team?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I was thinking about this. I think, the easy answer is Cam because he's a really good punter. But I think Nelly's going to do really well up there. I would have loved to see Nelly with Brady. That would have been a lot of fun. But I'm gonna go Deshaun. And I know I'm by myself on this one, but I still think he can play. And I think they're going to use him smart and play him, a couple snaps per series, get him in there situationally. He doesn't have to go there and be the one, which they really by default he had to be here when he was healthy, and he played too much and he got hurt. And some of the injuries were flukes. We talked about the cheap shot when he was back for a punt. I think he can still play. I know he can still run. His last game, he had an 81-yard touchdown. If he stays healthy, and it's a huge if, I get that. But I just have a hunch. I just think he's going to be okay. He's going to play 13, 14 games and catch, 35 to 40 balls for, 650 yards. I just think he's going to be okay.
I'll take the under there. But who knows? I mean, maybe having his normal support system in LA, talking about his own trainers and stuff, maybe that'll help him stay healthier. I don't know. I just don't have any faith that he can do it. I hope he does, because he's fun to watch.
That. I get that, and I understand. I'm on an island with this one. Just a hunch.
You had the hunch last year too.
I was wrong.
My guy, if I had to pick one, is Jalen Mills. I get people are down on him here, but he never really got the chance to be a safety because he was forced back to corner because of all the injuries. For his sake, he kind of wished that they didn't have those injuries to corner and he could have just focused on safety, because I did see signs of improvement as the year went on. He's a smart player. He has good instincts. He does have limitations physically, and I think those show up more at corner than they do safety. But the fact that Bill Belichick wanted him, I think he has a plan for how to use him. And Belichick is one of the best defensive coaches ever. So that intrigues me. I think he has a chance to go there and do big things. And I think his skill set has always been that of a safety. And he was out of position for the first 4 years of his career.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. And it's interesting how many Eagles D-backs have gone up to the Patriots. Patrick Chung, Otis Smith, Eric Rowe.
Chung came here, who just retired, by the way.
Yeah, I saw that. End of an era.
Do you think there's any player in the league who was thought so differently in two cities? Like, you mentioned the name Patrick Chung here, and it's Patrick.
Well, how about Nick Foles here in Jacksonville?
Or Chicago.
Or St. Louis, or anywhere. But that would be a good gallery. I have to write that one down. But it's a good point. If Belichick thinks you can play. I think he'll do well up there. And he's a big hitter. I mean,
I'm excited to see how they use him, because I really do think he always should have been a safety, honestly. But we'll see what happens there. Let's go through the list of Eagles who were on the 2020 roster who are currently free agents, and we'll each pick one of those guys. If Howie's held at gunpoint and he has to sign one of these guys, who would it be? Jason Peters, Alshon Jeffrey, Nate Sudfeld, Nickel Roby-Coleman, Cravon LeBlanc, Richard Rodgers, Nathan Gary, Corey Clement, Josh Perkins. You going Peters there?
For me, it comes down to Alshon, Peters, and Nate Gary. Who do I want back? No, I think it'll be interesting how many of those guys don't play at all. So some, I certainly wouldn't be surprised if Alshon is done. Although somebody's desperate, has some injuries, sign him to a minimum deal. I don't even know if he would sign that. I don't even know if he'd want to play for that guy. He's made a fortune. Guy's made like $70 million in his career.
Yeah,
but
65 of it from the Eagles. just keep paying him.
He's the Eagles, the highest paid player in franchise history that never made a Pro Bowl for the Eagles.
Wow.
And I believe Todd Harriman's is second, like $30 million less. But anyway, I would say Richard Rodgers. I thought he played pretty well in Ertz's absence during that stretch when the 5 games he was hurt. He catches the ball, I mean, as well as anybody we've seen. He just catches everything, and he can run. He gets down the field. I'll tell you what, even if assuming they do trade Ertz, even if you have Kyle Pitts, I think Richard Rodgers is a good guy to have around. He's a lot younger. I thought he was like 34 because he's been around forever. He's like 28. So I think, and there's not a lot to choose from there. Some of those guys, like I think Corey Clement he'll play somewhere as a special teamer and an emergency back, but I think he's got to go find another another team.
He probably should have done that last year.
Probably should have. So I'll go Richard Rodgers.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think that's a pretty obvious one. I'm going to go Crayvon LeBlanc. I just like him. I know he can't stay on the field, but they need corners.
Been a problem.
Yeah, but they need corners. And, I'm not bringing back Roby Coleman. So I'd bring back Crayvon and give him a chance to. Right now, they need everything. They need outside and nickel. So, and look, if he's just a backup, I'm fine with that too. I'd want him back.
I'm sorry.
No,
who's their third best corner right now? Let's say, behind Slay and Avante by default is going to be their second best.
Yeah.
Who's the third best corner? Who's that?
Mike Jacquet.
Jameson Houston.
It's probably Jacquet.
I guess. But you were I interrupted you. It was very, very rude of me.
No, unlike you. Of those guys, which is the least likely to return?
JP.
Yeah.
There's just no way. Right?
I don't know, man.
I mean, Alshon, if they re-signed Alshon, even if it was at minimum, there'd be a riot.
There really would be.
They're not going to. So I would say Alshon's probably even less likely than JP. But they're both.
It's a shame. Like Nate Gary, they wouldn't re-sign him here. But as a special teamer, he's pretty good.
Yeah.
Problem is that Eagles asked him to be a every down player.
Yeah. And I think sometimes you just you have to get out from under that. And if they re-signed him, all of a sudden he's Nate Gary, who sucked at linebacker last year. You can go.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even do that because they're going to have. You just drafted 2 kids last year.
Yeah.
You have TJ Edwards, who's a special teamer. Alex Singleton, we expect to be on the field a lot, but he's you have other guys to play teams at linebacker, and you probably draft one too.
Out of those guys, who do you think has the most left? Who do you think is going to go play well somewhere?
I don't know if there's Richard Rodgers, I think, can give you 20 catches.
Yeah, I mean, he'll be in the league.
Yeah.
I think Corey will be in the league. Corey will be in the league for a few years.
I'm not maybe. Problem is he's now pretty far into this, and you're talking about a special teams running back. Like teams want their own guy.
Yeah, 5th year. You could, I think he's eligible for the veterans minimum, right? In your 5th year.
Yeah.
Eligible. Maybe it'll take that
kind
of
salary benefit deal.
Yeah. He's a pretty good special teamer, I think.
Yeah, he's an up back. I mean, that's a decently important role.
And you get you 100 yards if you get in a Super Bowl.
Someone will sign Sudfeld.
Probably.
I think so.
Yeah. He didn't play
Roby
well.
Coleman had to take a really cheap deal last year, so he didn't play well.
I don't think he's going to play again. That's out of the blue. I'm just going to say he's not going to play again.
Okay. I think he'll be in the camp.
Yeah, maybe. I say he won't play in a regular season game the rest of his career. Sudfeld did not help himself the last time we saw him play, by the way.
The Eagles didn't help Sudfeld.
Did that really happen?
It's not a good sign when they put you in the game and everyone thinks you're tanking.
I still can't believe he did that because he's been here a while and he's meant a lot to us. That wasn't Doug's finest moment.
No, it wasn't. But also everyone who was on their pedestal about that calmed down. Wasn't
yeah, absolutely. I can't believe it happened.
You got anything else?
I can't believe the Doug Peterson era ended with Nate Sudfeld out there. I mean, it's kind of crazy.
And him answering questions about tanking.
Yeah. So it goes.
Yeah. You got anything else before we wrap this one up?
No, I am looking forward to Sixers Lakers tonight. And I'm going to miss Tony Bradley. I like the way he was playing, but
Were you hoping for a more eventful trade deadline?
No, because I think this team's got tremendous chemistry. And sometimes the best trades you make are the ones you don't make. And I think Hill's going to help, but I'm okay with it. I'm okay with not tearing the thing up. And I really like the way they're playing. I think they have a chance to beat the Nets in a series as they're constructed right now. I mean, I watched the Nets last night. They didn't have Harden, obviously, but they were down. They were down like 35 to Utah when I finally fell asleep. And, the Sixers lose Embiid, Simmons, and Curry, and they're going out there and beating teams obviously it was Utah, but I don't know. I like two even teams, and everyone's talking about the Nets. Sixers are still ahead of them. They haven't had Embiid in 2 weeks. And when it comes to defense, I'll take the Sixers over the Nets any day of the week. So it's going to be interesting Eastern Conference playoffs. I wouldn't
certainly will be.
Concede anything.
All right. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, please do us a favor, rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button there. We'll talk to you guys again next week. For Reuben, Dave, that's it.